Okay, we're live. Ready? Three, two, one. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 201. I don't really have a name yet, but we're going to talk about YubiKeys and U2F and Fido and all this other stuff. But first, I made my coffee this morning, and my big mug has a little perfect area for milk. So I pour that milk up to that line first, and then I pour my coffee in. And it was always cold. And then I reversed it. I said, let's see what happens if I reverse it. And magically, the coffee stayed hot. Can Tom explain why?
I can't, but I imagine thermodynamics might be at play here.
So I didn't think of it, but so one of my students explained to me that as you pour the coffee in, the surface area of the very hot coffee hits the very small amount of very hot coffee, hits the large expansive bathtub of milk and instantly cools. And you say, but you're putting so much coffee in. Yeah, but as you do it, it cools the coffee and it cools down the temperature and cools down the temperature. So it gets a lot, what's it called? It gets a lot cooler faster. So just a tip, if you don't like really hot coffee or you have to find a way to cool it very fast, put the milk in first. I reversed it, and now I'm happier with my reasonably temperatured coffee by obviously putting the milk in second. And I know I'm a heathen, but I've recently changed. I'm now what's it called? I'm on the good path to coffee drinking.
I always used to do I always do the cream first, really for a more simple reason, which is, sometimes most of the time I have no idea how much milk I'm going to put in, right? I have no idea. So if I put it in beforehand, I get everything from like Starbucks style, a few drips of coffee with a cup full of milk to, there's barely any cream in this and it's just black coffee with like a drip or two of milk in it. But if I put it in afterwards, I can accurately control the exact level of cream to coffee that I've got going on right there.
So I have another student who videos the milk explosion as you pour the milk into the coffee, which I didn't know was a thing. But she had at least a dozen videos of her pouring milk into a glass container of coffee and watching the milk like spider web out.
Yeah, okay. Oh, it's a thing.
I guess I'm too old for this. I didn't.
There's an entire art form to coffee. I wouldn't suggest diving in head first because it gets pretty nuts, especially if you get into like your own, buying micro batches of coffee from various coffee plantations around the world, roasting it yourself, roast times and methods. You can use an air popper that you would use for popcorn to roast your coffee. It actually works fairly well from what I've heard. You can do it in the oven. I've been down this path. You don't want to do that.
I just tell people, get a Mr. Coffee for $12 at the supermarket. You'll be infinitely pleased with it over any sort of K-cup contraption.
I would agree with that. I'm more of a French press guy myself. I think, for a little bit of extra work, it's definitely not as easy as the, push button Mr. Coffee. But for a little bit of extra work, a French press, a good steel filter, you've got wonderful coffee with all of the great tasty, the oils that just make the coffee even better than if you run it through like a drip filter or another paper filter.
Well, this is completely unhelpful, but the best coffee bean I've ever had came from a kiosk in Puerto Rico. So which mall is it? I don't know, but it's in San Juan, Puerto Rico at the mall, whatever that is. There's a little kiosk of somebody selling $5 a pound coffee. Took it home, and every time my friend goes back, I ask her to get me at least 1 or 2 bags, and we all love it. But I know that was completely unhelpful.
It's okay. I can be slightly more helpful if you're ever in the Seattle area. It is expensive, but Storyville Coffee, fantastic. Honestly, some of the best coffee I've ever had. It's wonderful. Unless you are doing like the micro batching of coffee and roasting it yourself, Storyville is probably the closest you're going to get to that perfect cup.
So anyway, let's move on. I mean, I now want coffee and it's really late at night, but we were going to talk about this last week and just timing and snow and maybe snow. Like you're buried under like 1.5 inches of snow.
Um, so it's been coming down for a bit now. This is the second dusting we've gotten, and Seattle doesn't really get a bunch of snow, like Seattle proper. Uh, it has put down, I want to say, close to 10 inches at this point. I could be very off on that. I might be closer to 8. But the city just shuts down. They don't have any of the necessary tools to deal with it. Like back in Ohio, right? We had like giant facilities, giant warehouses full of salt and snow dissolving chemicals and like liquid heat and fleets upon fleets of snow trucks and just all this equipment to take care of it. Seattle's got basically none of that. We've got a couple snow plows, and I guess that's it.
You know what? That's probably a better. You know what? I'm probably envious of that because here in New Jersey, we have half of what you have in Ohio and not half the snow. Like we get 3 or 4 inches, we basically shut down, but everyone expects you to work. When there's 3 inches of snow, the entire city shuts down. And it's okay, it happens and it melts in a few days and you're back to normal. But so we had all these timing issues, whatever it was. But let's get to the one of the side stories that happened last week. Google, first started that Facebook got all their internal development apps and certificates, I guess, revoked by Apple in a slap on the wrist. And then it translated into Google, mainly because they were doing some pretty shady privacy stealing things. Like, for example, they were putting some sort of app, like a man in the middle app, that would pay teenagers $20 to like get all their data. And Apple really didn't like that.
Yeah, so big companies have the ability to go to Apple and request an enterprise developer certificate. What this basically means is that you're a big enough shop and you have, internal apps, whether it's beta testing apps, like the Facebook employees would use this enterprise cert to sign essentially alpha and beta builds of the Facebook application for iOS and have their employees, what we call in the industry, dog food their application. Basically, they tell all the employees, hey, look, we'll give you like a widget on your profile if you're a beta tester for the Facebook app on iOS. And the Facebook employees, when they're whitelisted, get access to essentially like an internal app store full of Facebook apps and Facebook approved apps, pulled down like beta clients on Messenger, Instagram, whatever. What you're not supposed to do with this, expressly forbidden by Apple, you're not supposed to do this, is use anything signed with your enterprise cert and give it out to the general public. If you want to dog food it across, your million, 2 million, like a billion employees, whatever, they don't care, right? They're under your employ. But the moment that you start giving out these internal applications to the general populace, you have run completely afoul of the terms of use of the developers agreement that Apple has put you under. So what Facebook was doing is, for a $20 gift card, they'd offer or they would put a VPN on your phone and watch literally everything you are doing on that device. Now, the big issue is not that we're it's not that they were doing this, right? They could have absolutely put something in the general app store and done this for anyone that they wanted to. The issue was that they used their enterprise certificate to do this. So Apple got wind of it. They said, oh, wow, this is bad. This is really bad. So they just completely revoked everything. They just said, yeah, this enterprise cert, it's bad now. Every iPhone just immediately got like that push update. It was almost instantaneous. And every single application that was signed with that certificate stopped working, just completely stopped working. Facebook, Google, these big companies have a lot of apps for a lot of different things. Like in Facebook's case, they have an app to go through the Facebook cafeteria or to call the Facebook commuter shuttle so people can actually get to work. There's a lot of internal apps that companies use for various reasons, some really smart and some really stupid and a bunch of them in between. But for basically a full day, Apple completely shut down everything iOS related at Facebook by revoking this certificate.
So I guess that's good. I mean, we've been talking about iOS and Android lately versus which one is better. And it is a little scary that Apple can do that from an open source standpoint. I would say, you know what, this is a little scary that if you do something wrong, whatever it is, Apple can just shut you down. And then I look at it and look, we've talked about the stories about Facebook and how they are doing pretty shady things. So I think it sounds like Apple was over the top. The problem is not the problem, but they relented a few days later. I guess they just wanted to make a point, make the news, make a press release. But I think Apple can do this. If they don't like your app, they can just yank all your certificates away and leave you with nothing if they choose not to. If they choose to, I mean, right? I guess.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that the enterprise app process is totally separate from the standard, iOS marketplace app review process, right? If you want to put out an app for the general public, you do have to go through the approval steps. With this enterprise cert, you can just publish. You can just throw it out there, and only people, in your internal network, according to the terms of service, are able to pull that application. It's basically a way to completely bypass Apple's reviews and get stuff out the door as quickly as possible. Perfect if you are working for Facebook and developing internal applications. It's exactly what it's meant to do. There's nothing shady or wrong about that whatsoever. What is shady and wrong is asking people to put a VPN on their device so you can watch all their traffic and give them a $20 gift certificate, because they might not know enough to know what they're signing away at that point, right? They're inspecting literally everything in and out of that device. It's super shady. But if Facebook wanted to put out, there's a VPN app for everyone, then they could have. They just had to go through the retail consumer channels and couldn't have done so on the sly.
So let me take a side point of that. By the way, look at your messages while I'm talking. So let's look at Google. And so Google also got yelled at the next day. Like literally the next day, the same thing happened to them. And I'm thinking, like, what did Google do? They're also in that same type of company. I mean, I have a lot more respect for Google than Facebook. But they were in the same boat. And I thought about it. Look, I do Google rewards where they ask you, were you at this place yesterday? And you say no, you get 10 cents. If you say yes, you answer a question, how did you pay? And you get, I don't know, 18, 22 cents. This adds up. Basically, you get a free month of Google Play Music at the end of the year. Or whatever it is, you get a free movie, a free rental, all this, but by giving them the stuff. How do they know where you were? The location data. So I'm doing the same thing, and I guess I'm okay with it because I'm helping them. I have a lot more trust for Google in these cases than Facebook.
Yeah, and I think on one hand, I'm slowly de-Googlifying my life. On the other hand, I agree with you. If I had to pick one of the evils to safeguard my data, I'd trust Google over Facebook any day. I don't think there's really even a competition there. Now, are either of them good? Are either of them evil? Are either of them, totally out to get you and sell you up the river for a penny? I don't know. Maybe, probably. It's, it is what it is. But if I had to choose one over the other, Google every day.
I mean, we hear from the Google security team how they're finding bugs and making things more secure. I mean, we are finding that. I don't hear anything from the Facebook security team. With that said, getting into a later topic, Facebook does allow you to put a PGP key and allows you to log in with the security key. So clearly the security team is good, but I think they're just siloed away from the marketing team, and we're seeing the problems of this.
Yeah, unfortunately, and this is a problem in a lot of different companies. It's not just big companies. It's not just tech companies. I've worked at companies massive and companies super teeny. Security should absolutely be the gatekeepers of your products, right? They should be the people doing security reviews on the stuff you're about to put out, right? Whatever product or service you launch should go through security first. Security should have the ability to pump the brakes on whatever marketing wants to put out that day, or whatever Facebook research decides to put out a VPN app, right? Security should have come out and said, whoa, this looks shady, we're not going to allow this. And they should have been given the ability to pump the brakes, right? It should be an absolute security gets the last word in this. And people don't like that. Like business-minded people don't like that because it does slow things down. It absolutely does. It does mean that Facebook research, if it went out at all, they would have had to wait, maybe a couple months to get a security review out the door, right? To get their stamp of approval of, yes, we're doing everything we can to, safeguard company and user data while we're analyzing this traffic. On the other hand, if you give security that power, they might be able to put a stop to it entirely and say, no, there's no way. The risk is far too great and the benefit just isn't there. We are putting the absolute stop to this project and we're not going to do this. I think it keeps people safer, but I understand why business people do not want security departments to have that kind of ability. Unfortunately, it shows.
And unfortunately, look, we've always said, listen to your security people because they generally have insight that you may or may not be missing. But anyway, Tom, do you have any Wi-Fi light bulbs?
I don't. I actually, honestly, have been considering getting a couple just because it would be so nice to be laying in bed and be able to turn off the light just by screaming in a direction instead of, getting up out of bed and flipping the light switch like some sort of Neanderthal.
I mean, I don't think you've experienced laying in bed, turning off the light. But anyway, I did make an extendo stick when I was younger. It did work. But anyway, I have lots of Wi-Fi light bulbs. My choice, but apparently some people don't like their Wi-Fi light bulbs and they're throwing them out. They're just literally throwing $50 out in the garbage. Turns out the Wi-Fi codes are still logged on to the Wi-Fi light bulb. So dumpster divers are picking them up and are able to get Wi-Fi passwords and login codes to the apps. And my first reaction is, who's throwing away Wi-Fi light bulbs? But turns out, I guess people are.
Yeah, and honestly, when you think about it from a consumer's point of view, I want to urge everyone listening to the show, right? If someone's like, oh, they're throwing away a Wi-Fi light bulb, well, of course they're going to get hacked. And of course it's got stuff on here. People aren't going to think about that. And it's not because they're stupid. It's because they're treating this product the way they've treated every other light bulb in their life, right? It doesn't matter if it was incandescent or fluorescent or an LED bulb. When it dies, you just throw it out, right? There's no other cognitive load to dispose of a light bulb, right? Unless you're one of those people who are like, wait a minute, you shouldn't be throwing out fluorescent lights. You have to recycle those in a very special way to not damage the environment. You're absolutely right. Most people don't. They should, but they don't. With Wi-Fi light bulbs, right? They aren't thinking of anything else. It's not a special technology. It's just a light bulb. It's a plain and simple light bulb that I can just scream at and it turns on or off. Unfortunately, we apparently in the tech community haven't done a great job of educating people that Internet of Things devices do have a lot of these login credentials and Wi-Fi passwords and application-specific passwords. And, God forbid that you have done like any sort of like on-device integration with like a Google account or an Apple account or a Facebook account or something else to hook Internet of Things devices up to other services to do stuff, right? I don't know why a light bulb would need Facebook access, but a smart speaker might. So throwing these devices out without a full wipe can be super dangerous. And unfortunately, the tech community as a whole, and I'm including us here, we haven't done a good job at all about educating people about the risks of simply throwing things away.
I don't think we've educated people the risk of just buying random IoT devices. I mean, it's a race to the bottom. If you look at, somebody said, which smart socket thing would you buy? And I said, to be honest, I would make sure it has a big name because yes, I think the Amazon one's $25. And I know some made in China white market one is $15, but the Amazon one I would take way more over because they have a vested interest to update and to do everything. Same with the Belkins and the Wemos and all the others. Some random third party one I would be very, very scared of. The other issue is I see now No Hub Required works with Google Home and the Echoes, and I guess not with HomeKit yet. But the fact that you have an app for it means that you have another app. Who's vetting this app? What because they're probably throwing it together just so you can connect to the smart speaker, not doing updates, not doing any of this, and you're going to fall prey to this. In this case, this was a LIFX LIFX light bulb, which are, I mean, they're fairly big name in the Wi-Fi light bulb. They are new. They are trying, and I'm going to put the link in the show notes. This isn't an easy hack. This is not like you put into the light socket and you even run Wireshark. You have to cut it open, get the board, buy a specific board. They're saying, I just lost it here. I mean, you need some real tools. You need an Arduino board to get it and then run commands and everything else. And you're like, I don't think most people are doing this. This looks like a really targeted attack.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely sure it is, right? Some random person isn't gonna, sit on the street. It's not like WEP back in the day when you could, when a teenager who wanted Wi-Fi to, watch, I don't know, real video clips. I don't know what I was doing back then on the internet. Go to Dig, look up the coolest tech stories on Dig that day, right? Or use StumbleUpon or MySpace, right? We could crack WEP in a couple minutes and get totally free internet for the whole day before somebody found out that someone was totally draining all their stuff running LimeWire. But if you are a high profile target, if you own a business, if you've got a lot of money, if somebody just has it out for you and are super technical, then yeah, they can use the Wi-Fi light bulb you threw out as a vector to attack you. Is it going to affect everyone? No. Is it going to affect literally everyone who throws out a Wi-Fi bulb? Far from it. Will it affect, a small number of people? Yeah. Is it kind of a curious hack that's going to lead to more research that could turn into something else later down the road? Certainly possible.
I mean, LifeX has now responded. Their Wi-Fi credentials are encrypted. They've done all this stuff. The RSA private key is now encrypted. So they clearly have responded to this. And they're saying, look, we care about the security. And I think LifeX does automatic updates. So you should be getting this. Your lights may flicker once or twice. But again, LifeX, like I said, they're a pretty big game in there. When you see the no-name other ones, they may not have done that. And it may not be as easy, or it may not be whatever it is. You're just hoping that it is secure and nobody does target you. So if you're going to throw out your Wi-Fi light bulbs, obviously you're going to need to format them first.
Yeah, which might not be easy or possible depending on the brand you buy, right? Some of them will be fairly simple. Some will have the return to factory defaults button, and you do that, the thing flashes, and you're done. You unscrew it, you throw it away, you give it to somebody, whatever. A lot of the big companies will have this wipe feature. Some of the no-name ones, though, good luck. You could try to chuck it in a fire. I wouldn't recommend it. There are noxious chemicals in there, but, you got to dispose of it somehow, and just keeping it in a drawer somewhere isn't great.
I mean, should we make a Wi-Fi light bulb degausser? I mean,
I think we're gonna have to. Now we kicked this around our WhatsApp group, which you should totally join, by the way, if you're interested in these kind of topics. We kicked around this problem for a little bit, and I think we came up with a fairly novel solution. I don't think anyone's going to do this because it does add cost to the production of these, extremely cheap Internet of Things devices. But if the ephemeral storage on the device weren't on the device at all, if it just had like a micro SD slot, you could treat this like a hard drive, right? I will throw away any computer and give any computer to anyone as long as I take out all of the hard drives, right? As long as I take out any storage media, I can give someone something without the fear of them getting data off of it that bites me, right? Within reason, right? There's insane amounts of research into like what you can grab off of a TPM or RAM chips after, or before they've cleared and cooled down, stuff like that. But for the most part, if you take away the storage medium, the device is relatively innocuous. It's relatively safe. So if you could just pop out the micro SD card on one of these light bulbs and just keep it, or wipe it, or chuck it in a fire, or lose it down a storm drain, right? You are way safer than the flash memory being on the device itself, where you can't get to it. Let's say the Wi-Fi chipset, or the Internet of Things chipset inside of that light bulb burns out, right? You have no way to connect it to anything. You have no way to get into it, to power it up, to wipe it. What do? At that point, it's just locked in there and you can't do anything unless you want to fix the device yourself. But with an SD card, you could just pop that thing out and it's now inert, right? It has no power over you.
I mean, we were talking about that, and I absolutely want this as a feature. And I said that my cameras have a local storage option, which I do, but you have to include the cloud storage. So I have the Arlo cameras, and 5 of them you get free 7-day recording, which is one of the positive features with this. So I said, well, what happens if I buy a 6th? I don't need it to go to the cloud, just locally store it. I'm going to keep it in my garage really just to see if the door's open. And the answer was no, it has to go through the cloud, which bothers me a little bit. Like I want the doorbell, the Ring doorbell, which to do the same thing. I mean, put a little micro SD card in it, let it save there. And if you get robbed, so unless they take the doorbell with them, I mean, you don't need to, I guess the problem is they want you to pay. And I don't really want to pay, and I want to have the local storage, and I want to be able to take it, and I'll probably delete it when it's full, but encrypt it at some level and be done with it so you have it.
Sounds like what you need is a security camera setup built out of Raspberry Pis.
I know, but then they look ugly.
They do look ugly, unless you 3D print a really nice case for them.
I mean, they look ugly and you got to do work. So
exactly.
I mean, we talk about trust and everything else. I always say stick to the big companies. They have a lot more to lose than some no-name fly-by-night company. Well, we're towards the end. We were going to talk about YubiKeys, and I mean, I'd rather wait a little longer on it. I want to go all U2F. So whether that's the Google security key, whether that's the YubiKey, whether that's something else, because U2F is an open standard, or the FIDO is an open standard. I don't care what it is, but I want to remove the text message me code on as much as I can. My Google account, my Facebook account, but I do want Google and Facebook to have it. So this was the internal dialogue I've been having with myself. I want a security key. I have money. I have a hole burning in my pocket. I'm ready to go. So let's buy the right ones and let's U2F everything.
Yeah, we talk about all these security keys. We talk about YubiKey in particular because they have a great track record. You know, in full disclosure, they have been on the show a few times, I think. They have given us free YubiKeys, so just putting all that out there. But they have a track record. Big giant tech companies are reliant on them, and the YubiKeys do a lot of cool security stuff. That's not just U2F, right? You can buy a U2F only key from Yubico for fairly cheap compared to like the Hallmark YubiKey 5 or whatever the newest version is, right? I think it's the 5. But U2F is an open standard, and there are a lot of companies that do it cheaper than Yubico. The Google security key is what, $10?
17 or something like that.
Okay, yeah, that's not bad.
But I mean, this is what we were trying to figure out. If you don't need any of the other features, then it's fine. And the big question is, well, what happens if you can't find your YubiKey? And they default back to either 6-digit TOTP codes and all the way down to, which bothers me, is SMS codes. And if the weakest link are SMS codes, I'm a little nervous about that. There's no it's the weakest link. People just go, I don't have my YubiKey, I don't have my Google Authenticator, and they'll eventually get to SMS codes, which bothers me.
Yeah, I agree. The weakest link in your authentication chain is the thing that breaks, right? It doesn't matter if you've got U2F and a 64 character password. If somebody can just say, hey, I forgot everything, can you recover this with a text message for me? And has already, convinced some guy at your cell phone provider to, port your number somewhere else, then there's not really a lot you can do to prevent that, right? The weakest link in your auth chain, that's the thing that gets exploited. That's the thing you need to be concerned about and pay attention to, right? You can make the front door as secure as possible. Unless you've secured everything, people find a way in, right? When it comes to security, the good guys have to win every single battle, right? The bad guys, They only have to win once. This is all a game of defense.
So that's what I was looking at, but having a U2F key, just sticking in, push the button, and having is amazing. Like it does change your life. Having it so easy to use that for $20, I wish they were much cheaper. I wish they're like down to like 5 or 10. Buy it for all my family members and say, here, put 2 of them on, keep one in the safe deposit box or somewhere, and here's another one. Just keep it with you and just have it at all times. But they are a little expensive, and there is a little teaching that needs to go on before you can make it work. So I was going to save, we were going to do that today, but we're going to save that for next week. We are over now, so let's call it a day.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. We'll talk to, I guess, next week.
See you, everyone.
Bye.